Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani and welcome back to this YouTube channel. Today I'm going to give you another entry from the Enabler Diaries. Before I do that, though, just a gentle reminder, if you would consider listening to my new podcast, Navigating Narcissism. You can find it anywhere that you subscribe to or listen to podcasts, and you can also find a link in the video notes. It's very different than what we do on this channel, and it really sort of punches out this conversation on narcissism in a really new direction. But let's talk about this new entry from the Enabler Diaries. So as you know, I'm sort of, all I do is read news stories about toxic people. Like, I'm glued to them. Okay, so I was reading an article yesterday on one of the many news stories about antagonistic people doing atrocious things. Literally my calling. I will be late places sometimes because I'm so focused on these articles. So this situation was a love triangle situation. Lady A was dating man A. Lady A and man A sound like they might have been on a break from the relationship. I wasn't fully sure on that. That's what the man is saying. Man A had been friends with someone else. Let's call her Lady B. And maybe, again, not sure about this, he spent part of a day with Lady B. I think they went out to dinner and did some outdoorsy thing. And Lady A was not okay with that. On top of that, Lady A is tracking both of them with some sort of tracking app and shows up at the place where Lady B was staying. And then Lady A shoots her. And Lady B subsequently dies. Lady A then flees the country and has since been apprehended and brought back to the United States. Now, in all reports of Lady A, she sounded dysregulated and clearly arrogant and entitled, given that she was likely going to be questioned in the case, and fled the country. It's like one of those high-speed chase situations. I don't know why people do that. Don't they think they're going to get caught? They're going to run out of gas, right? And airports are some of the most observed, regulated places on the planet, that the idea that someone could cross international borders or even get on a domestic flight without that being tracked is, again, quite grandiose and arrogant and almost delusional. Okay, so this isn't about these players in this story. I can't imagine the tragedy and loss that Lady B's family is enduring. The news report sounded like she was a perfectly nice lady. Man A is clearly at the center of a storm. And obviously there's now going to be a trial to determine Lady A's guilt now that she's been extradited and is back to the United States. It's not looking good for Lady A, let's put it that way. But this isn't about the crime. As I read further, I came to find out that people who know Lady A, the perpetrator, Lady A has not yet been found guilty, but let's just say, like I said, the evidence, which is heavily leaning that way, finds her guilty at trial, okay? The people who know Lady A from the past, there was one news story that they were sharing stories about her past behavior, such as getting loudly and dysregulatedly agitated about things like food allergies at some sort of wellness retreat they were at, and was behaving in a manner that literally unsettled everyone who witnessed it. Lady A, the alleged perpetrator's friends or acquaintances or whatever, have since learned what has happened about this alleged homicide. And one of these people went on to say, well, I'm not saying that what she might have done is okay, good, because it's an alleged homicide, but the person said she must have been going through a lot for that to happen. What? No, that's not an okay thing to say. Going through a lot? I was like, whoa, damn, that is an enabling statement. And a lot of people do use this one, right? Someone's going through a lot, whatever qualifies as that. That going through a lot entitles someone to rage and tantrums. And this is a whole new level. This is somebody who potentially may have killed someone. Where the hell did these enablers draw the line? She was going through something, right? I sometimes wonder if enablers are trying to make the pieces fit in their desperate hope for a just and sunshiny world. If we could just make sense of people's behavior, that they were going through a lot, or they really didn't mean it, or they're upset, then that somehow helps us make sense of the world. And then the enablers can maintain their warm and fuzzy, or at least their just view of the world. Unfortunately, that ain't the world we live in. The more you learn about the impacts of narcissism and psychopathy and antagonism, the more you realize that the world isn't warm and fuzzy, and we do have to be watchful all the time. I was recently yelled at by someone for not being willing to see the good in all people. And this person called me the B word for not being willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. You know what I've said? Benefit of the doubt are the four most dangerous words in the English language when they're used together like that. I didn't get into an argument. I just shrugged and I said, I'm not budging from my position. You can call me any damn name you want. To me, respect and trust are to be earned. You don't just get them, and even once earned, can be lost. The idea of just giving it up or assuming that we can make allowances for bad behavior early on doesn't work in a world where antagonism and narcissism are everywhere, and more problematically, are either rewarded or enabled. They're just going through a lot. Maybe they're just going through a lot. Okay, they're just going through a lot, so they're going to harm another person? Sure, I don't care what a person's going through. It's not okay to harm anyone on the full continuum of violence to anything else. Many enablers I meet are sort of sad throwbacks, wanting the world to be good, and more importantly, the people in the world to be good. And I'm the witch who's saying, not so much. Obviously, in this particular case, it's extreme, right? And if it turns out that Lady A is guilty, the motive for her is most likely dysregulated jealousy, coupled with a long-standing antagonistic style, and her existing dysregulation. Throw in some entitlement, mix that up, and you have a very strong risk of violence when a person like that feels abandoned or betrayed. Going through a lot is not an excuse for bad behavior, and yet people use it all the time. Listen, I might even buy it as a motive. They're going through a lot. But then there must be proper consequences for the behavior. So even back when that woman was behaving in an out-of-control manner about a food issue that the report of that person said that wasn't that serious, there should have been consequences then. The woman should have been kicked out. When there is a crime, we always want to know motive. And when we can't discern a motive, it's actually really kind of uncomfortable for us because then it feels random. And when things are random, that's mildly terrifying. In a story like this one, the motive isn't unclear. The behavior is clearly unacceptable and illegal, and it will work through a system. And if convicted, there will be some form of consequence. However, the consequences for the victim of the crime and her family and her loved ones are permanent. Narcissism may not be against the law, but I'm here to tell you it's dangerous. In our lives, when I talk about narcissism on this channel, obviously things usually aren't this extreme. We certainly can't liken a violent crime or a homicide to someone screaming or yelling or doing the day-to-day antagonistic stuff like yelling at someone in a parking lot. The challenge is that the same enablers who say things like, oh, they must be going through a tough time to explain away bad behavior, are often the same enablers who don't think there should be consequences. Oh, let it go. They're going through a tough time. Let's just give them a chance. And then over time, the narcissistic or dysregulated or antagonistic person figures out that that's a free pass, going through a tough time. And they get to be a one-person wrecking crew in the name of going through a rough time and having to deal with their demons. Lots of us are managing demons. We just manage to not turn into them. You want to explain a person's behavior? Be my guest. I got into psychology to be able to do that, right? But you can explain all you want. That is not a substitute for consequence. In a crime, obviously consequence is more clear. Trial, penalty, conviction, all that stuff. But when there is no crime, as there usually isn't, just we're living our regular lives, what are the consequences? That's a lot tougher. In workplaces, it can be a little easier. Disciplinary procedures, demotion, firing. But since disgruntled narcissistic employees are often more likely to litigate in the face of what they believe is an unfair consequence in the workplace, many employers hold back. having to weigh out the balance of the cost of a lawsuit, or the risk of keeping a high antagonism employee around. In relationships, what is it? What do? You end the relationship? Communication isn't going to work. One thing that does work is slow disengagement and not taking the bait. But you have to endure the initial ramp up in abuse as they escalate to get a rise out of you. The biggest consequence, honestly, one of the biggest consequences you can give them is to not engage, hard as it may be. But the worst thing you can do is craft some enabling excuse. Oh, they're just going through a lot. And keep riding the trauma-bonded roller coaster, which ultimately puts other people at risk from that narcissistic person's behavior too. Folks, most of you are narcissist experts at this point. You could probably teach graduate classes for all you know. However, as long as there are enablers out there who don't get it, and most people don't get it, the narcissistic folks will be emboldened and empowered and keep getting second chances for eternity. And that makes for a more dangerous world for all of us. Thanks again.